welcome back to BIMteriors, your Revit content for interior designers. And today we're going to continue on to part two. So now that we have a better understanding than that base foundation of curtain walls, how they work, how to edit them, now we can jump into a bit more complex of a task using curtain walls. And there's so many times that we like to create these organic shapes as interior designers. And how do we create those curves without, wow, that's a bright sunshine today, but how do we create those curves without that segment and without those segmented parts within the actual curtain wall itself? And so today I'm going to go over tips and tricks of creating those organic shapes and making them so seamless graphically, visually on your drawings as you want them to be. Okay, so you can see my screen here that I've broken this down into 6 different steps and 6 different configurations that, my process goes through with having to create some of these curtain walls. And I'm going to go step by step on what happens when we create one with just out of the box Revit curtain wall, and you're going to get those segmented lines. You're not going to get that beautiful curve or that organic shape that you're looking for. And then we'll go all the way from making a beautiful, as you can see here in number 4, you're getting that curve, that organic shape to your curtain walls, how to add doors into that. And then sometimes maybe on an elevation now. Now, a lot of the times we're looking on plan views, but on elevations, maybe there's something else unique to our design that we want to tackle. So we're going to start from number 1, how do we actually do it with a curtain wall, and go through my process on how do we get to that end result. Okay, so what happens when you just grab a normal curtain wall and start to draw and get to the point where you want to add a curve or some sort of organic shape? This is what's going to happen. So you're going to draw and you're going to want to add a curve to it, and it's going to start to look like this. It's going to be segmented. It's not what we want. So again, I'm going to go through that process with you. At the architecture tab, you'll find your wall tool. Select on your wall tool, and you will drop down from, again, your walls and scroll down to one of your curtain walls. Now, it doesn't matter what one you're going to pick because you're probably going to get the same result. So I'm going to pick our curtain wall storefront. I'm going to come to a plan over here, start to draw, and it might come to a point where I want to add some sort of organic shape, some sort of curve, and I'm going to go to my draw tools. I'm going to grab the start, end, radius, and arc, and I'm going to just scroll in here. Oops. And I'm going to just start to want to create a arc. And you're going to see as Revit is trying to create that arc with you with your curtain wall, it's not allowing. So what you're seeing and what you're probably realizing is that it's trying to create it for you, but it's segmented, and that's not what we want. So what I'm going to show you is my process of how do we get to 4, and my thought process and my workflows to get there. Now, what you can do is there's multiple ways of tackling this and achieving, kind of cheating how the curtain wall works. And you can create walls. So instead of in the curtain wall, you can actually fake that curtain wall panel to be a wall, and it will start to actually move like a wall. Now, the issue I find is that your mullions still aren't moving with that. And so it becomes an issue. So what I have found is actually we can add certain profiles, add certain sweeps to walls that allow us to create this curtain wall lookalike. So you can see here, when you go to create a wall, so right now this is just a normal wall. There'll be a stud, some drywall on either side. You can see when I come to the architecture tab and find your wall tool, in this case here, I'm going to find a shortcut and just go create similar. I'm going to just start to draw a wall. And we're going to get to a point where we want that organic shape, we want that curve. And so what I'm going to do is just start to find a few points, find that. And you can see here, it's a little bit more giving you that freedom, that flexibility to create that smooth transition rather than having it segmented. So now where my thought process goes is, well, why don't we just change this wall to just glazing? So in step 3, you'll see that I've actually just created a glass wall. So what we can do is select the exact same wall. I'm just going to copy this up a little. to say around here. And what we want to do is modify this wall to just be a glass wall. So when you select on the wall, you can see here it'll bring up your wall properties, come to edit type, and always duplicate because you don't know where this is being utilized somewhere else in the project, and you don't want to start modifying those elements that are being used potentially in the project. So duplicate is always your best friend. And in this case here, I'll just call this maybe glass wall and hit OK. And what we're going to want to do is go to the construction and change the structure. So we're going to want to remove the plaster or gypsum or whatever it is in your wall and really just start getting it to the structure itself. And potentially, again, whatever you are specifying, whatever the detail is in your project for your glass. So in this case here, I'll just put it 13 millimeters, and I'm going to change the material. So when you're in your material browser, just typing in glass, so that it's either going to be one of your company standards, your studio standards, or the out-of-the-box Revit materials. Find glass, hit OK, hit OK. Lastly, hit OK, and you can start to see that you're now changing that to a glass wall. And what you're going to want to do is select that wall as well and find that new glass wall that you've now created. So you can see that you're getting a smoother transition. And this is great. We're starting, but we're missing our mullions. So if I go to number 4, you can see how did we get to that step? And I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, so now that we understand that the curtain wall is going to create segmented parts, we know that a wall actually gives us more creativity and control when it comes to organic shapes and curves. And we kind of took the approach of, okay, well, let's strip down that wall to just a glass partition. But now how do we add mullions built into that wall? And before we do anything, and before we get into level 4 to number 4 and getting to look more like a curtain wall, what we have to do is create a profile. We have to create a profile of what our mullion is. So at the top of your ribbon, select on File, drop File down and go to New. You're going to select the family tool, and this is where you're going to find metric profile. So once you select on that, hit open. I've already got one open, and it's going to bring you to your family editor. And this is where you can come to create your lines. And I've already drawn this, but this is where you can create whatever the profile you want. So as complex, as simple as you need it to be, and then load that into your project. So once it's loaded, now we can go through and start to rethink of what this wall is and add these mullions. But how do we do that? So I'm going to go back to my plan. I'm going to just copy this wall up so we can do this together. So how do we get from this wall to creating a wall with what looks like mullions? So when I select on the wall, what I want to do is, again, you'll probably create this once. I'm going to keep duplicating this so that we can see the progress, but you'll probably just call this whatever your naming convention is from the start and go through this with just one wall type and not have all these different wall types as I have. But for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to duplicate. I'll call this glass, maybe, you know what, wall partition. I'll call it curtain wall. Oops. Curtain wall. I'm going to hit OK. Now, what we want to do is take a look at the structure. We're going to want to add these so-called mullions. So I'm going to edit type. And what you can see is the way that I found is the most user-friendly to efficiently create, quick and easy, but to modify at any time, creating these as sweeps. And you can see that it's grayed out. So how do we get this from this grayed out portion to not being grayed out so we have a chance to further develop this wall? So under preview, if you select this at the bottom of your dialog box, you're going to want to change this. So if it's like this, it's still grayed out. So you want to make sure that your view is selected to sections so that this now becomes available for us to utilize. So we want to add a sweep. When I add a sweep, nothing's loaded just yet. So the family that you just created, you loaded into your project, you want to start to add. So when I add, it's just going to go by default, and you're going to want to find that family you just created. You're going to want to, again, you can change the material at any time. You can change the distance offset. In this case here, I'm going to put one at the top, one at the base, and see what starts to happen. I'm going to hit apply. So in my section, you can see that in this wall, now there's going to be at the top and the bottom, this profile that we just created, that's going to represent the mullion. So I'm going to hit OK, hit OK, OK. And you can start to see now in plan, you're getting what looks like to be a mullion, which is fantastic. In this elevation, in this 3D, you're going to start to see that as well. And so I'm going to come over here and just change that wall. So we're getting there. So how do we add these horizontals and verticals? So unlike a curtain wall where you can come into your grid tool, you can see you can't add it. You can add it here because this is a curtain wall, but you can't add it here because in theory it's a wall. But that's not a problem because we have the sweep tool within the wall. So we can come to our wall and go to sweep. Now we can create a sweep with our profile of our mullion. So as I do that, it acts very similar and if not identical to our grids. So you can do that. So if I go back to that command, drop that down and go to wall sweep, you can see that your placement, you've got vertical, which I just did, or horizontal. So we can start to add that. And this starts to represent and mimic our curtain wall tools, but we can do it within our wall assemblies using wall sweeps. And to change, modify them, super easy, very similar to grids, is that you have the control to change this as you want, or selecting the actual the data, the numerical value that you want from 2500 can be changed to maybe that's 1200. Whatever it is you want, however it is you want to modify, you still have that same flexibility like you would in an actual curtain wall. You can also modify these if you don't want it to go to the entire extent, just like a curtain wall. Very different where you can't just pick the grids that you don't want those to continue on or to go to. Other than if you come over here, you can see that you do have grips. So once it is placed, you can change those grips to maybe only come up to here. So you still have those abilities and that flexibility to create exactly what you want. And when you come to your plan, you can start to see that if I were to bring this all the way down, you can start to see it's acting just like a mullion. So this is a great example of, wait a second, but it's not perfectly centered. So if that's the case, it could just be on the profile that you're using. So in this case here, I know that my wall sometimes this is great when we do live sessions. I know that it's 150, which is great. I know that my profile is 150. So potentially sometimes when we bring this in, if it's not perfectly, so I'm going to select on that, move. So it looks like it is perfectly centered, but it's not coming perfectly centered on your actual wall. And that's an issue. So what we want to do is we want to be able to put this perfectly in the middle. So if I select on this, I know it's off by 13. So if I select on that, my offset from wall, I can actually go 13. Well, I know that that's the wrong direction. So what I'm going to do is go minus 13. And you can start to see that it's perfectly now aligned where it needs to be. So again, we're getting one step closer. Oops, go back to my 3D. Getting to exactly what we want. And you can add these verticals to your start and end point. So this way here, you're getting a curtain wall, but from not using your curtain wall tool, but using your wall assemblies and creating sweeps and mimicking and getting them to look like a curtain wall. Now you're at the point you've realized that, okay, there is a different approach than utilizing curtain walls. Curtain walls, you can achieve something similar, but what happens is it gets more complex. And what I do find is that your skill level has to be more on the skilled portion of utilizing Revit. And when you're getting multiple team members all at different skill sets, creating something so complex for them, even just to create that, is quite time consuming. So again, eating up those project hours. And if they have to be modified at any point, it takes a lot longer. So this approach and this mindset of using it as a wall and creating sweeps is so much more efficient for your team and your projects. Now, as you're creating your curtain walls, as you're placing your sweeps, aka your mullions, you're designing at some point, maybe you want to start to add a door. So how do we do that? And it's actually quite simple. So if I just copy this design up over here, you'll find that at the end of the day, think about it, this is a wall. So in theory, if I actually just grab this door, create similar, it will actually just place it in where it needs to be. So again, super, super easy and friendly because it's a wall at the end of the day. So you don't have to get creative with making custom doors that are only available to curtain walls. Like these can be any of the doors that you're utilizing in your project. And then you can kind of come over here and play around. So in this way here, it gets exactly, so I'm just going to move this over here. It becomes exactly where you need this to be. And if I'm grabbing this, these are all, again, being able to be modified. So maybe this comes, and again, if I found the right angle, so that this way here I have more control of it, you have way more control of where these go and where these stop. So you can get that perfect termination point. So you can do that to the other side. I can come in over here, create something similar, and start to create that process. And again, you can see that that's not the right spot for it, but you can see how easy it is to actually move this to the right spot. And even editing, you have the ability to also edit your base profile of your mullion, which is fantastic. And maybe even again, this is now going to drop because we want this to be that transom. You now have full control, and you can see how easy it is to navigate, that no matter your skill set, you're able to create something so custom, so unique, so easily. Okay, so if that's at the end of the day, if you have a profile where in elevation, it's actually a rectangular shape, square shape, there really is nothing organic or unique about it, well, then you can stop right here. However, sometimes we get into our elevations and we want to kind of continue these organic shapes. And so how do we go from on plan doing the exact same thing what we did for our elevations? So you can see here on this case here, I've got this beautiful arched, I was gonna say portal, but this beautiful arched curtain wall. And a lot of the times with curtain walls, even with walls with this profile, you're gonna get an error message. So we're gonna walk through the error message you're gonna get and the quick and simple workflow that I will show you to achieve what you want. So I'm gonna go to our plan view. I'm going to, just copy this wall on up so we can start to play around with it. And I might not want it to be curved for this case here, this example. I'm going to leave it just like so. And I'm even going to come to my elevation, create something similar. So this way here, we've got a start endpoint, and we're going to want to create this profile. Now, I'd recommend always doing this in an elevation view. I'm going to be doing it in a 3D, but just so you can understand how to do this. So regardless of 3D or elevation, when you select it, you can edit the profile in your modify wall tools. And you could, instead of this boring rectangular shape, we can actually go from one side to the other and start to create that arch. And I'm going to hit OK. So you can see that the profile, that sweep, is not continuing like we want. And regardless of doing it as a curtain wall or a wall, you're still going to get this. So how do we go about to create this beautiful end result of like that mullion creating and curving just so? And it's actually quite simple and a task that anybody can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, easiest step, select on it, copy to clipboard, from here, drop down your paste into the same place. And so what you're going to want to do is edit that profile. And I'm going to just actually delete that. We're going to want to offset this line. So we're almost going to want to create what that profile is going to be. And then actually, instead of glass and this wall assembly, let's just create a mullion type wall. So in this way here, we can just fake it. So again, you're not going to get too many of these instances, but if you are and you are struggling with this, this is actually a very quick, easy way to get any shape that you want. So I'm going to use my pick line tool. I'm going to offset it, whatever it is the offset of my mullion is. So in this case here, 50. I'm going to bring this down. And we can see where this is terminating. So maybe we want to kind of keep bringing this down to perfectly end here. And again, making sure that we make sure that it's fully enclosed. I'm going to keep going like this. So you can see like that's the profile that we're going to want. And when I do hit on the finish edit mode, you can see that delete instances. So I'm going to just delete that for now. And you're going to see that we do have a wall here and we have a wall here. What we're going to want to do is select on that one that we just created. And instead of this wall partition current wall, I want to drop this down and we can actually just create a wall that's the same material and same thickness and same profile as our mullion. And you can see here, it will easily fix that for you. So there might be some things that you have to go back and forth and edit and change. But with the abilities to pull and drag where these stop and start, and you can start to play around with these get you to exactly where you want to be. There might be some things that show up quickly, and it's as easy as selecting them, deleting them, and even just selecting on the mullions / sweeps that you have in here and just adjusting them to be where they need to be. But you can see you can easily create that profile with a very efficient and user-friendly approach. That is a wrap on today's session with curtain walls. And hopefully now using this new approach, you've gained more insight on how you can go and create these organic shapes within your projects. If you're hearing this message, it means that you listened to the new content all the way to the end. And for that, I thank you. Please like and subscribe now to gain access to new Revit content.